Star Penn here. I am your leaky gut coach and the founder of the JIA Blueprint. And I want to talk with you about a very important topic that concerns many of us if we have a child that was diagnosed with juvenile arthritis. Are there siblings at a higher risk? Some of you might be watching this video because you actually have other children with juvenile arthritis. And now you have another that's been diagnosed, or maybe you have other children that have other autoimmune issues, neurological issues, behavioral issues. That could be anything ranging on the spectrum, from autism and ADHD to tics to hormonal disorders to things like physical things like eczema, type 1 diabetes, lupus, and you have a child with juvenile arthritis. How is it all connected? Is it connected? That's what we're going to talk about today. So one thing to really understand and be clear on is that if we have a child that's been diagnosed with juvenile arthritis, if this is the first child that you have that has any kind of chronic diagnosis, we absolutely want to look across the board at the entire family and recognize that this is something that very potentially could down the road affect your other children if it isn't already. And we also want to look up, we want to look at the parents, we want to look at the grandparents and things like that. And there's a couple reasons why we do that. And that's what I want to explain on this video. So that way you can really understand what it is that you're dealing with, because we're trudging along, little Bobby or Alice falls or gets sick or wakes up one morning with a swollen joint. Long story short, through a series of events, we find out that they have juvenile arthritis. And it's important to understand that they didn't catch this, and it isn't just some, unfortunate event that could have befell anybody. There are reasons why children develop juvenile arthritis, and understanding those reasons are really the foundation for us to understand how to get out of the situation. If we don't know how we got into it, how are we ever going to get out of it? And that's what I help my families with inside the Blueprint, is to get out of this situation where you may hear that this is something that's irreversible and just needs to be managed. Once you understand what's really going on in the body, you'll see that absolutely isn't the case. It actually can't be the case when you understand what's going on in the body. So let's talk about the first component, the first thing that we might want to look at, and that's the genetic component. And look at you, your husband or your wife, or, the two of you, and then also your parents or even your siblings. Because what we're dealing with when we have an autoimmune disease is a gene sequence in the body with certain genetic factors that are flipped on, and they're exhibiting themselves flipped on like this is what is manifesting as an autoimmune issue. We have flipped on genes as autoimmune, neutral genes is healthy, and flipped off genes is cancer. So that's how, in the same vein, even though that's not the topic of our conversation, how when doctors say, are there any cancers in your family? That's what makes people more prone or not, is this gene sequence that we're handed down and what was handed down to us. So as you know, just from basic understanding of, health and genetics, is that there's all these genes that are potential, right? That's the gene sequence, all the genes that are potential to make up us, given to us from our mother and our father. And then the ones that are chosen, right? The brown eyes, the hair, the color, the texture, all those things become who we are. And so the same is true with our physical health. The things that are handed down to us and these gene sequence, these things that are either turned on or turned off, that is going to determine to some degree whether or not we would develop an autoimmune issue. So that's why it's important to look at the genetic component and how genetics play a role in developing something like juvenile arthritis. But something that we want to understand is that juvenile arthritis is not a disease unto itself. It is autoimmunity, and it encompasses all the autoimmune issues that anybody could have. The only difference between juvenile arthritis and, let's say, lupus is the juvenile arthritis is taking place in the joints. Uveitis, it's the inflammation taking place behind the eyes. Each one is really just a different organ or a different part of the body that is experiencing this inflammation and this reaction of the immune system, this flipped on immune system for whatever reason, right? The immune system's flipped on. And that is what determines where in the body that this activity takes place, and then the name that we get a name for it. But it's important to understand, as part of, again, as a foundation, that it really is all one thing. Because when we see it for what it really is, and that it really is all one thing, then we know what we can do to reverse it and to fix it, take care of it. So we want to first look at the genetic component. And the reason why this is so important, especially with our children, is because they're still growing. They are not fully developed. And all of us have the ability to manipulate the genetic code to a degree. We all have, our bodies have that ability. But with our children, science has shown with the study of epigenetics that if we can get these immune system markers brought down, the ones that are flipped up, if we can get them brought down to a neutral level by the time they're 19 years old, like really when, those hormones stop, developing into adulthood and starts to coast a little bit more, we have the ability to lock that in, to lock in that genetic health, and to really keep that an autoimmune disease not only from ever reoccurring in our children again, but also we are protecting the next 6 to 8 generations down the road from ever developing an autoimmune disease. And why can we say that? Well, remember, if this is the route in which your child developed their autoimmune disease, a genetic component, again, it doesn't have to be that grandma had arthritis. It could be that dad has Hashimoto's. It's all one thing. So if this immune system marker is flipped up, and this is what was passed down to our children, to our child, then it's really just a matter of the immune system marker being flipped up, not the arthritis in and of itself. And then it's just a matter of where this battle gets fought. And in your child's case, it happens in the joints. So could it be that you have 1, 2, 3 kids all develop juvenile arthritis? It can happen. I've seen it happen. What's more common is that we see different stuff. And, one had eczema and GERD and has trouble going to the bathroom. Another one has learning disabilities. And then another one has juvenile arthritis. And then by that time they find me, having not connecting these things at all. So when we're looking at it, so there's different ways that we can develop an autoimmune disease. One, the most obvious one, is it's being handed down to us genetically. So in that case, and in that scenario, it's easy to see then how our child who has juvenile arthritis, how we would be wise, even if our other 2 kids don't seem to have anything going on, we would be very wise to look at this as an autoimmune issue, especially if you know that either you or your husband or parents or siblings have autoimmune issues, that this is something that was handed down to them, flipped on immune system markers, and that it's very likely that the others have it too, even though it hasn't manifested itself yet. So that's why when people enroll in the blueprint, I always say, hey, good for you. You came here for Johnny, but we're going to heal the whole family. Everybody's going to get the healing. Everybody who wants to participate, that is. This is not just for your JIA child. This is really helping the whole family to reverse their autoimmune issues. So we look at the genetic component when we're ascertaining whether or not we think our other children could potentially suffer with the same disease, either now or one similar or down the road. Another thing that we look at, and is a very real concern, is our own gut microbiome. Let's say that there's no autoimmune disease in our family. There was none in mine. No autoimmune disease that I know of whatsoever in my family. But we have another issue over here that we're dealing with as a collective that is epidemic at this point. And that is of our gut microbiomes being completely whacked out of shape. And this really started probably back in our parents' day, when industrialization became more popular, when burger joints started to come about, when making food cheaper for more profit started to come about. That's where it started. If we go back further in generations past, where people ate straight farm to table, there wasn't Roundup being sprayed on their food, a simpler life. Not just food, right? They didn't have 5G radiation or microwave radiation around them. They didn't have however many immunizations that children get now. That's not to say that they shouldn't, but you look at how many we have now, and if there were even any back then, all of the medications that we have. Think about, let's go back 100 years. And if a child had a flu or a fever or a stuffy nose, usually the remedies would have been folk remedies, right? Something that their grandma did for their mom, and they would use those things. But we have all these things at our disposal. And, with that quick fix do come consequences. But all that to say that, yes, this probably got its start with our parents' generation or a little sooner. And then by the time we came around, we were born into a world where there were TV dinners and Pop-Tarts and fast food all around, and we partook, but we didn't always partake. We partook, but it was a little bit different. And then also, even with those things, as they're coming down the pipeline, we're starting to even see those get made, with less expensive ingredients to turn more of a profit and things like that. So we're starting to see more chemicals being created, more ingredient lists elongating, and so on and so on and so on. We could go on and on, right? With the plastic and everything that we're bombarded with. Well, what we were born into, our parents had probably a pretty rock solid microbiome. And if you know anything about our microbiome, it really is the root of all health. The gut is the root of all of humankind's health. That's where it resides. If we can heal that, we can pretty much heal anything. But our parents' guts were probably rock solid, really diverse, really healthy, based on the way they were raised, what they weren't exposed to, and whatnot. And when we are born, especially if we're born vaginally, we receive our gut microbiome from our mother. And then that is like that seeds us as an infant. And that's what we have to start with. And just think, when we were kids, did our parents know anything about probiotics or anything like that? No. So our parents, whose gut microbiome probably got a little bit worse, they probably lived a little bit, of a lifestyle maybe before they had kids. And then all they could give us was our gut microbiome, right? When we were delivered vaginally. If we weren't delivered vaginally, or if our children weren't delivered vaginally and were just a C-section, we never get a gut microbiome. We don't even get one. And so doesn't that explain a lot? Because they show there's a direct correlation with C-sections and eczema, C-sections and allergies, C-sections and peanut allergies, C-sections and asthma, all of which are autoimmune diseases, by the way. They're the precursor of these bigger things to come down the road. But sometimes it's an emergency, it's necessary, we get the child here and we take care of it. But think about, our parents didn't know that. So we're being born into a world with blah, 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 right? I don't need to go back into all of that. But that's the world that we're born into. And then we lived our lives. And so you see how our health is digressing. Now our children are born through us with all that we have. So we didn't really notice it. Maybe you did. Maybe you have an autoimmune disease. Maybe you were made aware early. But for the vast majority of us, we went all through our school years, through the college years, our 20s, our 30s, not giving any thought to something like our gut microbiome and just living as normal. But by this time, we're 3 generations deep, not just with food, but with environment too. And our children are not only born with a vastly reduced, if not non-existent, gut microbiome, they're also born into this world that is 10 times more toxic than anything we ever came into. So they have the generation of kids that are born today have the absolute worst start. And so we are seeing it's on a rise. We didn't see this when we were kids, right? We didn't see kids with anxiety and depression and, different disorders. And this is on the neurological side of it. We didn't see childhood obesity, which a lot of times can have to do with food intake, but it could also have even more to do with hormonal imbalances, overgrowth of yeast, and it's the yeast that's starving. It's the yeast that says eat. It's the yeast that says I'm hungry. All of this is all because of being born with poor gut microbiome without really knowing what to do about that from the start. And it just progressively getting worse and worse and worse through the generations. So we've really bottlenecked here. And so we have an entire generation of children who have very serious chronic illnesses. It could be autoimmune issues. It could be cancers. It could be neurological issues, behavioral issues, hormonal issues. And it's not a fluke that your child developed juvenile arthritis. There's a reason. And like I said, it bottlenecked here. It's a reason why you're here. And when the immune system is giving you these flares, it's in essence communicating to you saying, hey, I need help. I need help in here. It's not your enemy. It's your friend. Your immune system, your child's immune system is your friend. It is your best and only advocate inside their body to let you know that something is very wrong. And so what we do inside the blueprint, we listen to that immune system. We see it as like, thank you for telling me. And we get to work at fixing what's wrong rather than silencing the immune system, because that's not going to be the long-term solution. And really, when you think about it and you think about if my one child is going through this, whether it came into our life via genetic immune system, triggered on genetically, whether it came into our life that way, or if it came into our life the way that I just mentioned, just through generations of degradation, which this is definitely one way it's come into our life. But if we got both, right, we do not want to fool ourselves into thinking that this is just, unlucky me that I have a kid with JIA. It's like, no, this is that immune system, that flare, that inflammation that you're seeing is an alarm. It's there to speak to you, to tell you, look out, not just for your child here, but for your whole family. So I always tell my clients, one day you're going to thank your JIA child, because it's going to be because of him or her that your whole family healed. Your whole family's lives have changed because of them. One day we can thank them. And we can also thank them for what we don't know. Because a lot of times if you come to me and your child has juvenile arthritis and your other kids or child doesn't have anything, well, you know what? We can thank him and the work that we're going to do, that we'll never find out what it could have been. We'll never find out what it would have been for the other, because we're going to, as a family, change it and fix it. So I hope this information is helpful for you. If you have a child with juvenile arthritis and you have other children, or you're looking to have other children, this is absolutely something that you want to be very aware of. And don't think that this is just like a fluke, that one of your child is JIA. There's something going on. There's something going on under there that needs to be dealt with. Okay. And if you do have other children with other autoimmune issues, I hope this helps you to connect the dots. So you see that this isn't just like random, like why do we all this stuff? No, it's all one thing. It's all one thing. Mom needs to heal, dad needs to heal, everyone in the family needs to heal. And we will absolutely not just reverse his or her, your child's juvenile arthritis, but everything that's going on in the family. So I hope this video is helpful. Please like this video, subscribe to my channel, because that way, if you hit the little bell there, you'll get notified whenever I make a new video. And by all means, reach out to me if you'd like to work with me, or if you have any more questions about juvenile arthritis or want me to make a video on a certain topic.